that takes place. But packaging that as though the only solution to this is Trump's ridiculous threat to send in the National Guard to Chicago, as though that's the only solution, and that the Illinois governor, J.B. Pritzker, is actually refusing to take on this solution, well, that's editorializing a headline, okay? Anyway, let's get back to the domestic issues here as Big Boy Pritzker, J.B. Pritzker, speaks as Trump says he's sending troops to Chicago. Okay, he's speaking like a demon. Hold on.
That the President of the United States likes to go on television and beg me to call and ask him for troops. I find this extraordinarily strange, as Chicago does not want troops on our streets. I also have experience asking the President for assistance, just to have the rug pulled out from underneath me when execution meets reality. I refuse to play a reality game show with Donald Trump again. What I want are the federal dollars that have been promised to Illinois and Chicago for prevention programs that have proven to work. That is money that Illinois taxpayers send to the federal government, and it's an insult to any and every citizen to suggest that any governor should have to beg the president of any political party for resources owed their people. I'd like to ask a question of my own, and it's one the press should be asking as well. When did we become a country where it's okay for the U.S. president to insist on national television that a state should call him to beg for anything, especially something we don't want? Have we truly lost all sense of sanity in this nation, that we treat this as normal? As I have done since becoming governor, I've been reflecting on my responsibilities to the people of Illinois. And one of those duties is to share with the public exactly what we know. In the coming days, we expect to see what has played out in Los Angeles and Washington, D.C., to happen here in Chicago. First, Donald Trump is positioning armed federal agents and staging military vehicles on federal property, such as the Great Lakes Naval Base. It is likely those agents will be with ICE, Customs and Border Patrol, the Department of Homeland Security, and other similarly situated federal agencies. Many of these individuals are being relocated from Los Angeles for deployment in Chicago. We believe that staging that has already begun started yesterday and continues into today. Second, unidentifiable agents in unmarked vehicles with masks are planning to raid Latino communities and say they're targeting violent criminals. As we saw in Los Angeles, a very, very small
over the conflict of the
Stabroek
oil block that has been awarded to Exxon. Venezuela is trying to claim a large portion. This is the U.S.
Instead, we're
defending
likely to
Exxon's
see
interest. That
videos
does
of them
make sense.
hauling away mothers and fathers,
And
traveling.
it's shitty because, like, it's
picking up
shitty
their kids
because,
from
like,
school,
Venezuela has no right to the Guyanese national resources either. Guyana's national resources either. So, like, when he tried to do that shit, when Maduro tried to pull that shit, a lot of people were understandably frustrated by it as well. Like, other Latin American countries were very upset at that move as well.
We have reason to believe that Stephen Miller chose the month of September to come to Chicago because of celebrations around Mexican Independence Day that happen here every year. It breaks my heart to report that we have been told ICE will try and disrupt community picnics and peaceful parades. Let's be clear, the terror and cruelty is the point, not the safety of anyone living here. Third, as lawful citizens exercise their First Amendment rights, Trump and his team will be looking for any excuse to put active duty military on our streets, supposedly to protect ICE. We have reason to believe that the Trump administration has already begun staging the Texas National Guard for deployment in Illinois. I want to be very clear on this point, and I want to speak directly to the press right now. We know before anything has happened here that the Trump plan is to use any excuse to deploy
also,
armed
as far as
military
like
personnel
extraction
to Chicago.
contracts goes, like you say,
someone
U.S. resumes
flings a
imports of
sandwich
Venezuelan oil
at
under
an
new
IC
license to Chevron.
Trump will try
That
to go on
doesn't
TV
that
and declare an
doesn't
emergency
mean that
in
they
Chicago.
won't that they don't benefit from further encroachment or further destabilization. Because remember, if you look at Iran, right, the Iranian initiative by Mossadegh was not to like completely fucking take over their own oil refineries and control every aspect of the oil refinement process. It was simply to recalculate how much the British were fucking them. And even that was a bridge too far for Western interests. So like these guys don't even want like a 50-50 split when they deserve even a smaller percentage than a 50-50 split. So as far as like Venezuelan oil entering the international market through American agencies, that's still not good enough for our profit seekers.
Of ICE in Los Angeles, and he's been sent here to do the very same thing. Go look at his social media. He terrorizes innocent people and then posts on TikTok edits of himself. Apparently, this is a Trump administration norm, because the last time we saw staged major ICE raids in Chicago, they sent Dr. Phil here to embed with the agents so he could get views and likes for his social media.
Asmongold.
When Bovino pulled these stunts in LA, people got hurt. 2 innocent people died trying to flee his masked agents. ICE opened fire on a vehicle without dangerous provocation.
That's true.
They detained a disabled 15-year-old, drew their guns on him. They have ripped mothers away from their babies and handcuffed 10-year-olds. In Washington, they pulled over firefighters headed to fight an actual wildfire and detained 2 of the firefighters on duty in that effort. And they want to bring all of that to Chicago. During one of Bovino's raids, U.S. Customs and Border Patrol's own data indicated that their officers had no prior knowledge of criminal or immigration history for 77 of the 78 people arrested. Again, this is not about crime. More and more reports around these raids include people who were stopped.
This isn't to say that I think JB Pritzker is like the best politician in the country. He is a billionaire after all, and he has his own weaknesses. But I will say he is far better, in my opinion, than fucking Gavin Newsom. Okay?
And pass a comprehensive immigration bill.
I don't know. Maybe it's because I live under the... Maybe this is like a West Bank versus Gaza opinion on Hamas leadership. Where, like, because I live in California under the oppressive thumb of gruesome Governor Gavin Newsom, I look fondly at JB Pritzker as the governor of Illinois. Maybe people in Illinois could tell me that they could tell me that he's actually worse, but I promise you, he is better than Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom has set a very low bar to begin with, but JB Pritzker clears it.
I have to deal in facts, and here they are. Crime is down in Chicago. Murders are down by almost 50% in the last 4 years. They're down 57%. Robberies down 34%. Burglaries down 21%. Motor vehicle thefts down 26%. One violent crime is too many, and we have more work to do. But we have made important progress on safety that Trump is now jeopardizing. Just during the last week, I've been in neighborhoods across Chicago, from Bronzeville to South Shore to Chatham to Little Village. The president's absurd characterizations do not match what is happening on the ground here. He has no idea what he's talking about. There is no emergency that warrants deployment of troops. He is insulting the people of Chicago by calling our home a hellhole. And anyone who takes his word at face value is insulting Chicagoans too. Crime is a reality that we all take seriously, me especially. I've held the hands of grieving mothers who have lost their kids to. I've been in consistent contact with law enforcement and managed our state through some of its toughest moments. That has informed our comprehensive, evidence-based approach to crime, hiring more police officers and giving them more funding, gun and drug and gang interdiction, investing in community intervention, mental health supports, more substance use treatment. Those programs have shown real progress. Then you know what happened? Donald Trump and his Republican allies in Congress cut those programs because they are unserious people who seem to know nothing about fighting crime. We are ready to fight troop deployments in court, and we will do everything possible to ensure that agents operating inside the confines of this state do so in a legal and ethical manner. To Chicagoans, what you can do is look out for your communities and your neighbors. Know your rights. Film things that you see happening in your neighborhoods and your streets and share them with the news media. Authoritarians thrive on your silence. Be loud for America. To everyone listening, but most especially to the press, I refuse to pretend that any of this is normal. I refuse to concede the cruelty that we're seeing play out with the execution of Trump and Stephen Miller's policies are okay or justified. I refuse to fall into the pundit trap that demands we sacrifice vital constitutional rights if it's being done in the fake guise of fighting crime. Because, as I said 6 months ago in my State of the State address, any rational person who has spent even the most minimal amount of time studying human history has to ask themselves on one important question. Once they get the citizens of this nation comfortable with the current atrocities committed under the color of law, what comes next? Now I'd like to turn the podium over to the mayor of the city of Chicago, Brandon Johnson.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Governor. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you, President Preckwinkle.
Damn,
Right,
they were like, we don't give a fuck about Brandon
Pritzker,
Johnson.
the governor of Illinois, responding directly to President Trump, who earlier today had invoked Pritzker's name at a press conference, saying that Pritzker should call him and ask him for help fighting crime on the streets of Chicago. J.B. Pritzker saying that I will not call President Trump, he says. He said that Chicago does not want troops on our streets. That, of course, in response to what the president said. He said earlier today, quote, "We're going in," and that it was just a matter of time. We are actually going to go back to the press conference and listen in a little bit to what the mayor of Chicago is saying in response to all of this from the president.
In our city, we need the federal government to stop the endless flow of guns into our state and into our city. Chicago police officers have taken more than 24,000 guns, illegal guns, off the streets of Chicago since I've taken office. Over 24,000 illegal guns taken off the streets of Chicago since I've been in office. They have worked hard every single day to make our city safer, and they've made historic progress. However, we will never be able to end guns in Chicago as long as the president...
Talk about turkey genocides instead of always talking about Israel. You love to talk about Israel and genocide. How about your parents in which you are descended to, Turkey? Talk about Turkey genocides instead of always talking about Israel. Yeah, unlike you, I do talk about that. Not that, that has anything to do with the ongoing live-streamed Holocaust that Israel is committing with my tax dollars.
They are coming from Louisiana. And that is the harsh reality, whether Republicans like it or not. Occupying our city will do nothing to solve this problem. No matter how much work we do or how hard we work, whether it's expanding our Detectives Bureau, investing in community intervention, and addressing the root causes of crime, none of it will ever be enough until the president decides to end the mass trafficking of guns in our city. For every gun that the Chicago Police Department fights to get off the streets, 2 or 3 more new guns come into our city. Chicago will continue to have a problem as long as red states continue to have a gun problem. Shootings will continue as long as this presidential administration continues to put politics over people. We have sued Glock over their semi-automatic guns that are easily converted into automatic weapons.
Okay, I'm done with this. Bro, what is this hand? I already showed you this. We already clocked in on this too. He's not looking too great, okay? Yeah, he still has that fucking bruising. And it's clear that it's like not just a handshake bruise, right? It's just he's looking swole. That's liquid Snake's hand, bro. Yeah. His other hand looks red and bloated. Yeah, I mean, that's just how his ugly ass hands look in general, I think. But why can't he afford a proper makeup artist? I think with that level of scrutiny, it doesn't matter, right? Anyway, this is also another thing that the media is doing. 54 over the weekend in Chicago as governor rejects Trump's threat to send in National Guard. This is ABC News, right? ABC News is revealing this information. Like it's newsworthy to talk about 54 people being over the weekend in Chicago, right? It's a very there's a lot of gun that takes place, but packaging that as though the only solution to this is Trump's ridiculous threat to send in the National Guard to Chicago, as though that's the only solution, and that the Illinois governor, J.B. Pritzker, is actually refusing to take on this solution. Well, that's editorializing a headline, okay? This basically is stating, 1, crime is completely out of control in Chicago, and 2, isn't Trump right about wanting to solve crime with the National Guard? This looks like a headline directly ripped from Fox News. They updated the headline. 58 over Labor Day weekend in Chicago as governor rejects Trump's threat to send in National Guard. Trump continued to criticize the governor's handling of crime. This is consent being manufactured in real time to deploy the military. Okay? Now, is especially like weekends such as this one, like long weekends such as this one, are they particularly bloody? Absolutely. Okay? Is this a major issue? Yes. No one's going to sit here and be like, no, that's normal. It's literally lower than previous years, but it doesn't matter. That's still a fucking issue, right? That's still a major issue. But the idea that all of these people that are living in these neighborhoods are like begging Trump to send in the National Guard is ridiculous. The idea that like Chicago is a crime-ridden hellhole. The idea that Chicago is a crime-ridden hellhole, it's on fire, is also ridiculous. Okay? The problem here is that these guys are not even remotely invested in trying to find long-term solutions to issues like this. And instead, they focus on what an immediate aesthetic solution would look like, which is further military encroachment, utilizing the military as a domestic police force, which is unconstitutional in and of itself, and also more militant response. If a militant response was successful in curbing crime, in stopping crime altogether, or even lowering the rate of crime, then the American police force, that is the most militant police force on the planet in all of the developed nations, would have already eradicated crime. That's it. But here is Morning Joe, once again, never Trump Republicans, not a real constituency at all, representing an outsized voice within the supposed Democrat Party's base, and talking about how it's actually a good thing that Trump wants to send the National Guard. Let's take a look.
See this, as you say, we've been reading about this for years now, every weekend, and maybe crime has gone down. But, you know, we had the mayor of Chicago on last week saying, oh, we don't need any more police officers. Police officers aren't the answer. No police officers. You know, I think he said no 5 times. You look what's happening.
No police officers is not what any mayor has ever said in the history of mayors, okay? The notion that, like, a mayor in a major American city would say, we don't need any police officers, actually. We want We don't want any cops whatsoever is so fucking stupid. It's insulting the intelligence of the 78-year-olds that are watching right now.
This weekend, you look so, I actually think that J.B. Pritzker should do something radical. I think he should pick up the phone, call the president, and say, you know and I know you don't have the constitutional authority to deploy the National Guard here and to police my. You can do that in D.C., you can't do that in Chicago. But let's partner up. These are the most dangerous parts of my state. We would love to figure out how to have a partnership that's constitutional, that respects the sort of balance of federalism between the federal government and the state government. And let's work together to save lives. Because right now, just hey, nothing to see here moving along. No problem here. Hey, Donald Trump, we don't need you. And, the mayor talking about we're going to protect people's dignity in our city. We'll protect their lives. That's protecting their dignity. It would be radical for us to figure out a way to actually do what I've been saying from the very beginning on Washington, and that is seeing
Yeah, Morning Joe, remember, was calling him a fascist in the lead up to the election, saying how dangerous fascism would look like in America, only to, in the immediate aftermath of the election, go to Mar-a-Lago and kiss his fucking ring. So obviously, we already know that these guys are entirely compromised. Highest gun violence stats per state, 1 Mississippi, 2 Louisiana, 3 Alabama. It don't matter, because the solution there isn't also to go there with the military and have a constant presence as the military. That's not a solution at all. That brings in additional complications. These guys are not passed with domestic policing, okay? They're not. They don't have the proper tools. Like, our current existing police force is barely competent, and I would say incredibly violent and incredibly incompetent when it comes to domestic law enforcement. Now you got a bunch of National Guards people who don't have any training whatsoever, just walking around with lethal weapons, automatic machine guns on the fucking streets of major American metropolitan areas. Like, it just is crazy. All crime, for the most part, is born out of material conditions, born out of poverty being in proximity to wealth. That's how crime happens. And the solution to that is to cut down on the poverty, to improve people's material conditions. That's how you're supposed to do it. I mean, obviously, with like more militant enforcement, you can put a dent in the crime rate, right? But that's not a consistent way to deal with the issue. And it's not a real holistic way of dealing with the issue at all. It's no different than just like brushing it aside. It's no different than like, instead of homelessness, for example, instead of tackling homelessness at the root cause, which is an unstable, increasingly costly housing market that is pricing people out of their homes and forcing them into homelessness, instead of fixing that issue and building more housing, building free housing, public housing, right? What we do is more militant enforcement against the homeless, camp clearances, taking away their shit and discarding them, or just like pushing them beyond the city limits, right? But the problem doesn't go away. You just don't see it as much when you do that, right? We just arrest them, we throw them in jail, and we just hope God sorts it out. That's not a solution. You didn't solve the problem at all. You just pushed it away. You just made it somebody else's problem, as a matter of fact. And this is exactly the same shit. This is exactly the same thing. And in some instances, the military's utilization is quite literally to pack up the homeless as well. It's very frustrating to have to deal with this over and over again, and to look at like a short-term limit on I don't know, murders in like a 2-week period or something, to be like, oh, see, it succeeded, it worked.
Politicians creating partnerships that protect their people. leaders in Chicago.
But unfortunately, because a lot of these fucking dipshits are rich assholes, they don't think about it. They don't think about like the real, okay? And a big component for why the National Guard is being deployed or why the federal police is operating in these cities is to literally terrify the migrant populations as well. These cities are run by said migrant populations. Instead of giving them the proper authorization to exist on U.S. soil as they have for decades in most circumstances, we're just ripping them apart. We are just trying to pack them up and deport them expeditiously. It is incredibly cruel. It is incredibly fucked up. And the only reason why Trump is even attempting to do this is so that he can satisfy his white nativist base of support. Some of the dumbest, most racist fuckers out there are cackling like hyenas, demanding more of this kind of enforcement. It makes them feel good. And for Trump's purposes and for like Republican purposes and even sometimes Democrat Party purposes, this makes people feel like at least some of the things that they're demanding, they are getting. That's it. Human beings and the cruelty that they experience for not having the proper work clearance or the proper documentation in this country is like this violent enforcement against them is simply just a talking point for a lot of these people to satisfy their fucking needs. Okay? To satisfy their appetite, to make it seem as though the Trump administration is doing something. When in fact, if they were to actually tackle the issue of affordability, or if they were to actually tackle the issue of the housing crisis, well, one, they would also end up successfully having to deal with the housing market that creates more homeless people anyway, and also simultaneously alleviate some of these pressures that many Americans experience in this day and age. But that's too difficult to do because this entire nation is designed to protect the interests of capital owners. And home ownership is a mechanism for that. Home ownership is seen as like the only way to have a nest egg, the only way to have some kind of capital that you can give to your next of kin. It's too powerful of an interest for the American government to actively undermine. So instead of doing that, we just keep packing up homeless people, moving them elsewhere, and we keep packing up immigrants and making it seem like the government is actually doing something that they promised that they would do. Meanwhile, none of this solves the issues at hand. The problems persist.
And I grant you they're separate pots, but do you believe it's wrong for the president to send ICPV? Because the Democrats in Chicago don't want any of it for some reason.
Oh, I'm not here to defend the Democrats in Chicago. They suck too. My only point is that there are constitutional rules and prerogatives here that the president has made really clear he doesn't give a rat's ass about. And neither do a lot of the people who just simply say because he wants to do it, therefore he should be able to do it because he's declared a crisis. And as the president said, I'm the president of the United States, I can do whatever the hell I want. That is not what we have in this country.
Well, he is saying that he believes it is his responsibility when there is an emergency in the country to try to respond to that emergency. And what he has also said is that these Democrats should be asking him for help. And by the way, what's happening in Washington right now, I think, shows what could happen when some local person, even a Democrat, says, actually, you know what, this is a good thing. So,
but I stipulate he has the constitutional authority to do it in D.C., right? He doesn't have the constitutional authority.
But why would a Democrat resist?
That's a different question. That's a fair question.
No, here's the question. How is it an emergency when you have people who are showing up for legal hearing, their status and about their citizenship and their ability to stay here, and they are being grabbed out of hallways and taken to rooms where people don't know what's happening to them? How is that an emergency?
Well, it is an emergency that we have millions upon millions upon millions of illegal immigrants in this country that were let into the country through open borders, and now we have to try to get them out. It is, I mean, our view is it's absolutely an emergency.
I don't know. I have a friend who has on her wall her great-grandfather's emancipation papers from the 1850s. And he had to carry those papers around because at any point he could be picked up because of the color of his skin.
So you're comparing slaves to illegal immigrants?
I am saying, when you watch some of the video of people being taken down on the streets of Washington, D.C. and carted off, which look an awful lot like this is just happening from people because of what they look like. That is very concerning to me, and it feels a lot like they are being targeted because of what they look like and who they are, not because of what they've done.
All right, we're going to push pause here on this conversation because I do want to bring in the former Democratic mayor of Chicago, Lori Lightfoot. Madam Mayor, thank you very much for being here. This obviously, we've been talking about the constitutionality of what's going on, Chicago being different than Washington, D.C. I want to ask you about what the president says is a major problem for people who live in the city of Chicago. He has said to them, hey, you don't have to live like this. I know crime was a significant issue when you ran the city. What do you say to the president of the United States about this? What do you say to residents of Chicago who may be concerned about crime?
Listen, let's be clear. This is never about violent crime. It's not going to be about violent crime. I'm sitting in a studio that is 1 block away from Trump Tower. They're charging $800 a night for a room. They couldn't be as bold and audacious to charge that kind of amount if this was a hellscape, if this was a killing field. So it's not about violent crime. This is about two things. It's about power and it's about money. He wants to exercise his power. He wants to scare the heck out of immigrant communities, and he wants to use the pretext of the National Guard or the military coming in to Chicago to boost up the ICE numbers. But one thing I want to be clear about, we got a ruling today in San Francisco from a federal judge that said the pretense of sending in the troops into LA was just that. And we had lawyers defending that administration that clearly put on perjured testimony about the farce and the factual basis for doing it. If he comes to Chicago, he's going to be in court, and he's going to be sued by the state. He's going to be sued by the city, and I believe that there will be private interests that also sue him. This is not about violent crime, and I don't think we should pretend that this manufactured crisis and his attempt to provoke people in Chicago is legitimate exercise of power. It is not. Coming into Chicago.
I already covered the Venezuelan drug situation, the carrier strikes against the drug cartels. Okay, stop spamming it in the chat.
If he really cared about violent crime, go after the gun manufacturers who are just mass producing these weapons and have no liability or accountability. Go after the gun stores that know that they're selling to straw purchasers that flood into our city. Pass common sense gun reform that we have been begging for decades. Those are the kinds of things that actually would make a meaningful difference in violent crime. He's not talking about any of those things. He will not do any of those things about violent crime. It's about something else.
Before I let you go, Madam Mayor, I know we've obviously taken up quite a bit of your time as we watched that press conference together. But I think I would just ask you, I take your point that for the president, you believe he has many other reasons, here for doing what he's doing. The crime rate in Chicago remains what it is. The crime rate here in Washington, D.C. Remained what it is. What is the answer to getting that crime? Why can't local officials get that crime rate down? I mean, do you need more cops on the streets?
Listen, the crime rate has gone down. You heard the numbers of
this is it. This is the reason why Americans are so excited at the prospect of like militant enforcement. Okay, that's it. Because a lot of liberals in positions of power also do believe that like the only way to eradicate crime is by promoting a more militant solution. Okay. So if the left flank of the media is also doing this shit, then why wouldn't Trump escalate? Why wouldn't Trump use the military? It makes total sense. If you believe that the only way to stop crime, if you believe the only crime prevention, the long-term solution to crime is more violence in the hands of the state, then of course you're going to say the military is a good thing. It doesn't make any sense. Like, why wouldn't you? And what's interesting about it is that, like, while they are creating the permission structure for these kinds of actions, they're also simultaneously trying to criticize it from some fucking shaky constitutional basis. Nobody gives a fuck about the Constitution anymore, okay? Trump gets to do whatever the fuck he wants. He already said it. I'm the president. If I want it, it's going to happen. And there is nothing you can say about it.
Coming into our our city and telling us how to police our neighborhoods. If you want to send more resources, great. Send more money so we can hire more cops. Do more to shore up the federal law enforcement efforts to interdict guns and gun trafficking. Absolutely, we'd welcome that.
All
but
right.
that's not what he's talking about.
All right. Former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, thanks very much for joining us today. I really appreciate your time.
Sure.
All right. Coming up next year.
Do you guys understand, though? Do you understand? Do you understand the issue here? It's because liberals also kind of want like more militant enforcement.